Welcome back to LUMOPOP. This is where we look beyond headlines and listen to the quiet human stories hidden behind fame. There are moments when an entire industry seems to hold its breath. Moments when a single sentence, spoken calmly, without drama, can fracture years of silence. This was one of those moments. On an ordinary afternoon, in a press conference room that had seen countless routine announcements, a top Chinese male celebrity stepped forward and said something no one expected. Not loudly, not defiantly, but with a steadiness that suggested the weight of years behind it. What followed would ripple far beyond headlines, beyond fandoms, beyond scandal. It would quietly force an industry and its audience to confront an uncomfortable question. Who owns the truth of a public figure's life? The confession moment. The room was bright with camera lights, yet strangely still. He stood at the podium alone. No dramatic entrance. No entourage. Just a familiar face, composed as always. His posture was straight, his expression neutral. But if you watched closely, really closely, you could see it. A brief pause before speaking. A slow inhale. Fingers tightening, just slightly, around the edge of the podium. "I've never intended to hide anything forever," he said. "We were only waiting for the right time." The sentence was simple, almost gentle, but it landed like thunder. Within seconds, the quiet order of the room dissolved. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward. Phones lit up across the country. Somewhere beyond those walls, an entire entertainment ecosystem began to tremble. Because what he had just confirmed was not a rumor, not speculation, but a truth years in the making. A secret marriage to another man, another top-tier celebrity, another name etched just as deeply into public consciousness. Backstory through small details. For years, their relationship had existed only in fragments. A glance held a second too long, a smile that appeared, then vanished, when the other entered the room. An awkward pause in interviews where names were carefully avoided. Nothing obvious, nothing provable, just details small enough to dismiss, until they weren't. Fans argued endlessly. Analysts dissected body language frame by frame. But officially, there was only professionalism, distance, silence. And silence, when stretched long enough, becomes a story of its own. Inner conflict and industry pressure. At the press conference, his voice never rose. But when he spoke of the years behind that silence, it wavered. "Before we are celebrities," he said, "we are ordinary people." In the Chinese entertainment industry, ordinary is a luxury few can afford. Every contract signed comes with invisible clauses. Every endorsement assumes a carefully curated image. Every public appearance is calculated, not just for popularity, but for market stability. A single personal truth can undo years of strategic planning. He spoke of meetings that stretched late into the night, of conversations filled with fear, not of love, but of consequence. Fear of backlash. Fear of being labeled irresponsible. Fear that honesty could cost not just careers, but the livelihoods of everyone connected to them. In that world, silence isn't cowardice. It's survival. Intimate revelation. The wedding. Then came the detail no one expected him to share. Their wedding. Not a spectacle. Not a destination event. No celebrity guests. No viral photos. Just a quiet ceremony. Close family. A promise spoken without witnesses, beyond those who mattered most. "We wanted that moment to belong to us," he said, "not to the news." As he spoke, something softened in his expression. A faint smile, unrehearsed, unguarded. As if, for a brief second, he had stepped out of the spotlight and back into that private room where fame did not exist. It was there, he implied, that they found refuge. A place untouched by public expectation. A place where they could simply be human. Polarized public reaction. The world outside did not respond quietly. Within minutes, social media ignited. Their names surged to the top of trending lists, not just once, but repeatedly across platforms. Clips from the press conference were replayed millions of times, slowed down, analyzed, dissected. Some voices rose in support, calling the confession brave, necessary, long overdue. Others reacted with anger, disappointment, a sense of betrayal that had less to do with reality and more to do with the images they had held onto for years. For many fans, this wasn't just news. It was the collapse of a carefully constructed illusion. Moral maturity. Amid the chaos, he did not retreat, nor did he defend himself aggressively. Instead, he did something rare. He apologized. "I understand if anyone feels hurt," he said. "Your feelings are valid." There was no demand for understanding, no accusation directed at the audience, just acknowledgement. In an industry often driven by ego and denial, the restraint of that moment stood out. He framed his confession not as rebellion, but as responsibility. "This isn't about creating sensation," he added. "It's about being honest." Silence as support. The other man, his partner, did not appear that day. No statement, no press release, no carefully worded post, just silence. But those close to him described that silence not as distance, but as agreement, as calm, as trust in a decision finally made after years of shared burden. Sometimes, support does not speak. It stands. Privacy versus public ownership. In the days that followed, the conversation shifted. Slowly, beyond shock, people began asking different questions. Not just about the relationship, but about the system that had made secrecy feel necessary in the first place. At what point does admiration become entitlement? Where is the line between public interest and personal ownership? This confession cracked that boundary open. Long-term impact. As time passed, reactions evolved. Some fans who had initially lashed out began to write again, this time with reflection. Long messages about learning to separate art from personal life, about letting go of fantasy, about growing alongside the people they admired. Other artists quietly began to signal support. A like here, a subtle comment there, and the man at the center of it all returned to work, calmer, steadier, more whole. When asked if he regretted staying silent for so long, he smiled. "If I had spoken earlier," he said softly, "maybe we wouldn't be this strong." Philosophical ending. This story is not about scandal. It's about courage, about patience, about choosing truth in a world built on illusion. Here on LUMOPOP, we don't just chase gossip. We tell the human stories behind fame. Because sometimes, the most radical act in the spotlight is not rebellion. It's honesty. And perhaps this is not the end of the story, but the beginning.